2:15 in the morning, the coast of the Strait of Hormuz. Commander Arash stared at the green glow of 17 American radar returns. This was not a routine patrol. Usually, the Americans flew in pairs or small groups. Today, they moved in a perfect, unnatural wall of light. Why was he holding a personal cell phone instead of his tactical headset? That was the question that would haunt the next hour of history. The air inside the bunker was thick with the smell of ozone and old coffee. He was 40 feet below the jagged rocks of Bandar Abbas. Above him, the S-300 surface-to-air missile batteries were already tracking. Their long canisters pointed toward the Persian Gulf. They were waiting for a single command. Arash felt the weight of his phone in his left hand. His thumb hovered over a contact named Reza. It was his son. It was not his commanding officer. It was not the Regional Air Defense Center in Tehran. A young operator spoke from the terminal to his right. Commander, the targets are crossing the 12-mile limit. They are inside our territorial waters. Arash did not look away from the screen. Confirm their altitude. The operator checked the data. 22,000 feet. They are not descending. They are holding steady. Are they radiating? Negative. Their radars are silent. They are flying on passive sensors only. This was the first anomaly. 17 aircraft. No radar emissions. No radio chatter. They moved like a single organism. If Arash followed his standing orders, he should have already alerted the Central Command. He should have authorized a fire control lock. But something felt wrong. The electronic signatures were too clean. They were too perfect. 200 miles away, the USS Abraham Lincoln cut through the black water. On its flight deck, the air was a chaos of screaming engines and shouting men. Heat shimmered off the deck. 5 F-35 fighters were lined up for launch. They were the backup. They were the insurance policy for the 17 drones already in the air. Captain Sarah Miller watched the monitors in the Combat Information Center. She was the strike group commander. Her face was pale in the blue light of the displays. She spoke to her tactical officer. Status of the ghost flight. The officer replied, "They are at the limit. The Iranians are painting them with search radar. No fire control locks yet. Keep them on the track," Miller said. "We need to see if their commander follows the script." Back in the bunker, Arash looked at his phone again. He remembered a conversation from 3 years ago. His son was a graduate student in electrical engineering. Reza had told him about a new type of signal ghosting. It was a way to make a small group of drones look like a massive strike package. It was a way to bait an air defense commander into revealing his radar frequencies. If Arash fired, he would reveal every secret of his battery. If he did not fire, 17 American missiles might hit his position in 6 minutes. The red line was invisible, but it was there. The operator raised his voice. "Commander, we have a confirmed lock from the southern battery. They are asking for permission to engage." Arash felt a bead of sweat roll down his neck. The air conditioning was failing. Or perhaps it was just the heat of the moment. "Tell the southern battery to stand down," Arash said. The operator hesitated. "Sir, Tehran is monitoring the feed. They will see the intrusion. Tell them to stand down," Arash repeated. "I am taking manual control of the sector." He pressed the button on his phone. He did not call the general. He did not call the president. He called his son. The phone rang once. Twice. The morning was still quiet. It would not stay that way. 2:26 in the morning. Reza's voice was thick with sleep. "Father, why are you calling me on this line?" Arash pressed the phone to his ear. He turned his back to the radar consoles. "Reza, I need you to remember what you told me last year. The paper you wrote on signal deception. I am looking at a flight of 17. They are spaced exactly 100 meters apart. They move as one. Is that a human formation?" There was a long silence. On the other end of the line, Arash could hear his son sitting up in bed. 17. Exactly 100 meters apart. No, that is not possible in the wind of the Gulf. Not for 17 pilots. It is a digital mask. They are injecting a false signal into your array. You are seeing what they want you to see, Commander. The operator's voice was sharp. Tehran is on the secure line. General Kazemi is demanding to know why the southern battery was ordered to stand down. He is watching the live feed. He sees the intrusion. Arash felt the walls of the bunker closing in. Tell the general we are verifying the target classification. Tell him the weather is causing atmospheric clutter. He will not believe that, the operator whispered. Tell him anyway. 2:28 in the morning, 200 miles away. The Combat Information Center of the USS Abraham Lincoln was a hive of controlled intensity. Captain Miller stood behind the radar controllers. The Iranian commander is hesitating. Why is he hesitating? We are inside his 12-mile limit. He should have painted us for a kill 10 minutes ago. The electronic warfare officer looked up. Maybe he knows. Maybe he is smarter than the last one. Miller leaned over the console. Or maybe he is waiting for his own reinforcements. Launch the second phase. If he will not lock onto 17, give him something he cannot ignore. Copy that, the officer replied. Executing the swarm protocol. At 2:30 in the morning, the radar screen at Bandar Abbas changed. It did not happen slowly. It was a digital explosion. The 17 green dots suddenly split. They multiplied. 17 became 34. 34 became 68. Within seconds, the display was a solid mass of green light. A wall of targets was moving toward the Iranian coast. The operator jumped back from his seat. Sir, multiple launches detected. We have over 100 incoming. They are splitting into attack profiles. They are everywhere. Arash looked at the screen. His heart hammered against his ribs. His son was still on the phone. Reza. The targets just multiplied. There are hundreds now. They look like a carpet of fire. Reza's voice was urgent now. Do not fire, father. If you fire, your system will lock onto empty air. Then they will have your frequency. They will know exactly where you are. And then the real missiles will follow the signal back to your door. Commander, the operator was reaching for the master arm switch. The general is giving the order directly to the battery. He is bypassing us. They are going to fire. Arash dropped the phone. He lunged for the console. Negative. Abort the sequence. I cannot, the operator cried out. The southern battery has a hard lock. They are 3 seconds from launch. 2:32 in the morning. The sky over the Strait of Hormuz was pitch black. Then, a flash of orange light ignited the horizon. A single missile from the southern battery tore into the night. It was searching for a ghost. But as the missile climbed, something else appeared on the long-range radar. Something much larger. And it was not a ghost. 2:33 in the morning. The Strait of Hormuz. The S-300 missile was a streak of white fire against the black velvet of the Persian Gulf sky. It climbed at 4 times the speed of sound. It was hunting a ghost. Inside the bunker at Bandar Abbas, Commander Arash watched the telemetry. The missile was blind. It was searching for a thermal signature that did not exist. It was chasing a digital echo. Arash spoke to the operator. The missile will self-destruct in 10 seconds. It has no target. The operator was trembling. The southern battery is loading a second canister. General Kazemi is screaming over the command net. He says the Americans are masking a real strike. He is wrong, Arash said. His voice was a low growl. He is giving them exactly what they want. 200 miles away, on the flag bridge of the USS Abraham Lincoln, the mood shifted from observation to combat. Captain Miller watched the infrared feed from a high-altitude drone. The missile launch was a brilliant bloom of light. On her screen, she turned to her tactical officer. They fired. Did they hit the decoy? The officer shook his head. Negative. The missile just went ballistic. It is self-destructing over the water. But they have opened the door. Miller leaned over the map. Now we know where that battery is. Launch the Growlers. I want every radar from Bandar Abbas to Jask blinded. If they want to play with fire, we will take away their eyes. Copy that, the officer replied. Electronic warfare package is away. Raven 1-1 and Raven 1-2 are moving to station. 2:36 in the morning. The air over the coast began to hum with invisible energy. Inside the Iranian bunker, the radar screens did not just flicker. They died. The crisp green lines dissolved into a static haze. It looked like snow on an old television. The operator hammered on his keyboard. "Commander, we are being jammed. High-power, wideband interference. I have lost the northern array. I have lost the southern battery." Arash stood up. He walked to the center of the room. "They are preparing for a real entry. This is the suppression phase." He looked at the wall clock. 2:38 in the morning. He knew the American playbook. First the decoys, then the provocation, then the jamming. The next step was the strike. "Scramble the Alert 5, Arash ordered. "I want the 14s in the air. Now." "Sir," the operator hesitated. "The general has not authorized manned intercepts." "The general cannot see the screen," Arash snapped. "If we do not put eyes in the sky, we are sitting ducks. Tell the pilots to keep their radars off. Use the infrared search and track only. They must see without being seen." Minutes later, at the airbase in Bandar Abbas, two aging 14 Tomcats roared down the runway. Their twin engines sent blue flames into the night. They were relics of another era, but they were the only thing Arash had left. The pilots climbed into the soup of electronic noise. They were flying into a wall of interference, so thick it scrambled their navigation systems. The lead pilots spoke into the radio. "Control, this is Guardian 1. I am blind. I have no radar. I am switching to passive heat-seeking." Arash keyed his headset. "Guardian 1. Stay low, below the radar horizon. There is a large contact moving toward your sector at 30,000 feet. It is too big to be a drone." "Copy," the pilot replied. "I am descending to 500 feet at 2:40 in the morning." The situation reached a new level of danger. On the USS Abraham Lincoln, Captain Miller received a flash message from the Pentagon. The mission was no longer a test of Iranian air defenses. A high-level diplomatic transport was crossing the northern Gulf. It was a neutral flight, but it was flying directly into the zone, where the Iranian 14s were now hunting. The American commander realized the trap was working too well. The Iranians were panicked, and a panicked commander with a missile is the most dangerous thing in the world. Miller spoke to her radio lead. "Get me a direct line to the Iranian frequency. We need to talk to whoever is in charge of that sector." "Ma'am, we do not have a hotline established," the lead replied. "Then find one," Miller said, "before those Tomcats shoot down a civilian airliner." 2:41 in the morning. The Gulf of Oman. The Iranian pilot of Guardian 1 pulled his stick to the left. His F-14 groaned under the stress. On his infrared display, a massive white bloom appeared. It was the heat of 4 large engines. It was the diplomatic transport. The pilot keyed his radio. "Control, I have a visual on the intruder. It is large, slow. It is likely a troop carrier or a command ship, requesting permission to lock." Inside the bunker at Bandar Abbas, Arash leaned over the table. The heat signature was too big for a fighter. It was too slow for a missile. It matched the profile of a Boeing 747. "Guardian 1, do not lock," Arash ordered. "Identify the target visually. I repeat, do not use your fire control radar." 2:44 in the morning, 10 miles away, an American F-35 fighter was flying in total electronic silence. Its pilot, Lieutenant Vance, used his night vision systems to track the Iranian Tomcat. He was hovering just behind the Iranian's wing, invisible. The voice of Captain Miller came through his headset. "Eagle 161. The Iranian is closing on the neutral transport. You are authorized for a non-kinetic intercept. Do not fire. I repeat, do not fire. Break his focus." "Copy," Vance replied. Executing the thump. Vance pushed his throttles forward. The F-35 surged. He flew directly over the top of the Iranian F-14. He was less than 50 feet away. Then, he kicked his afterburners into high gear. The wake turbulence hit the Iranian jet like a physical hammer. The F-14 rolled violently to the right. The pilot shouted as he struggled to regain control. The roar of the American engine echoed through his cockpit, even through his helmet. 2:48 in the morning. Inside the Iranian cockpit, the pilot was breathing hard. "Control. I was just buzzed. High speed. High energy. I did not see him on the infrared. He came from nowhere. Arash felt a chill. If the Americans were using stealth fighters to protect the large target, then the large target was important, and if his pilots started a dogfight now, there would be no going back. He keyed the command net to Tehran. General Kazemi, we have American stealth assets in the sector. They are performing aggressive maneuvers. If we do not withdraw, we will lose our aircraft. The general's voice was cold. You will stay on station. If they cross the line, you will destroy them. That is your order. 2:50 in the morning. Captain Miller sat in the Combat Information Center. Her tactical officer looked at her. Ma'am, the Iranian general just authorized lethal force on the open command channel. They are at the commit threshold. Miller did not blink. Tell Eagle 161 to arm his missiles. If the Iranian nose moves toward that transport, take the shot. Are we changing the rules of engagement? The officer asked. The rules are simple now, Miller said. We protect the innocent. Even if we have to start a war to do it, the sky over the strait was no longer empty. It was a powder keg. Both sides had their fingers on the trigger. Both sides were waiting for the other to blink. The morning was becoming a nightmare. It was about to get worse. 2:51 in the morning. The Iranian coast. Inside the bunker, a new sound began. It was the high-pitched whine of the missile guidance systems. The cooling fans for the S-300 computers were spinning at maximum speed. The air was thick with the smell of hot plastic and static electricity. Commander Arash looked at the red light on his console. It was the master arm indicator. General Kazemi had remotely authorized the battery from the central command in Tehran. The local safety overrides were being bypassed. Arash was no longer the man in charge. He was a witness to an automated execution. The operator looked at Arash. His eyes were wide with fear. Commander, the system is in automated engagement mode. It is slaving to the southern radar. We have 17 separate fire control channels opening. The computers are slaving to the targets. The 17 ghosts were back. But this time, the radar was convinced they were real. The S-300 system was no longer guessing. It was calculating intercept points for every aircraft in the sector. 2:55 in the morning, 200 miles away. The electronic warfare officer on the USS Abraham Lincoln shouted, "Ma'am, we have a spike. The Iranian S-300 is in fire control mode. They are painting the diplomatic transport. They are painting Eagle 161. We are at a hard lock." Captain Miller stood up. Her voice was steady, but her hands were clenched at her sides. All units. This is strike. We have a hostile lock. We are green for self-defense. Prepare for suppression of enemy air defenses. Suppression meant destroying the Iranian radar sites before they could launch. Miller looked at her tactical display. 2 F-18 Growlers were already screaming toward the coast. They carried high-speed anti-radiation missiles. These weapons were designed to fly down a radar beam and vaporize the source in seconds. The American pilots were waiting for the word. They were seconds away from the release point. Inside the Iranian cockpit of Guardian 1, the pilot heard the scream of his own radar warning receiver. Control. I am being locked. Multiple American fighters have a hard lock on me. I am defensive. I am dropping flares. Requesting permission to engage. Arash watched the screen. The chaos was total. The civilian transport was 3 minutes from the kill zone. The American strike jets were 2 minutes from firing their missiles. His own battery was 30 seconds from launching its first salvo. He reached for the override key. It was a physical piece of metal. It was the only thing that could stop the automated sequence, but turning it would be an act of treason. General Kazemi would see the bypass signal immediately. He would be arrested before the sun came up. 3 o'clock in the morning. The Gulf was a silent theater of invisible beams and lethal intent. Arash gripped the key. His hand was shaking. He thought of his son. He thought of the flight deck of the American carrier. He wondered if the person on the other side was feeling the same weight. The operator counted down. 10 seconds to launch. 9, 8. The world was about to change. Both sides had committed their forces. There was no more room for talk. There was only the sound of the machines doing what they were built to do. 3 o'clock in the morning. The Strait of Hormuz. The air inside the bunker at Bandar Abbas was no longer human. It was mechanical. The automated voice of the S-300 system filled the room. It was a flat, digital monotone. Target acquisition complete. Final solution calculated. Launch in 10 seconds. Commander Arash felt the vibration of the cooling fans through the floor. His hand was clamped onto the override key. This was the moment. The machine had taken over. It did not care about the phone call to his son. It did not care about the identity of the 17 ghosts on the screen. It was programmed to kill whatever crossed the line. He looked at the operator. The young man had his eyes closed. He was praying. 3 o'clock and 30 seconds in the morning. 200 miles away, the deck of the USS Abraham Lincoln shook. 2 F-18 Growlers had just released their payload. The high-speed anti-radiation missiles were away. They were white streaks of kinetic energy. They were traveling at over 2,000 miles per hour. Their sensors were locked onto the radar emissions from Arash's bunker. Captain Miller watched the blue icons on her screen. They were moving fast. Missiles away. Time to impact. 60 seconds. The tactical officer spoke with a hollow voice. The Iranian battery is still active. They are going to launch their own salvo before our missiles hit. It is a dual-kill scenario. We are going to lose the transport. We are going to lose the pilots. Miller did not answer. There was nothing left to say. The weapons were in the air. The physics of war had taken over. 3 o'clock and 45 seconds in the morning. In the cockpit of the F-35, Lieutenant Vance gripped his flight stick. His thumb was on the weapon release button. The Iranian F-14 was right in front of him. He could see the glow of its engines. He could see the pilot's helmet in his digital display. The voice of the carrier controller crackled in his ear. Eagle 161. You are clear to engage. Take the shot. Vance took a breath. He began the trigger squeeze. His head-up display flashed a red box around the Iranian jet. The tone in his headset changed to a solid, high-pitched scream. He had a hard lock. Firing, Vance whispered. Inside the Iranian cockpit, the pilot Guardian 1 saw the world turn red. His radar warning receiver was telling him he was about to die. He pulled his jet into a vertical climb. He dumped a cloud of magnesium flares. The night sky turned into a garden of falling stars. 3:01 in the morning. The S-300 system reached the end of its count. The master computer sent the firing pulse to the southern battery. The canisters were ready to burst. The rockets were ready to ignite. The 17 ghosts were seconds from being met by 17 interceptors. Arash looked at the override key. He looked at the screen one last time. He saw the movement of the American missiles. He saw the chaos in the sky. He saw the path of the diplomatic transport. His hand moved. He did not turn the key to the left to authorize. He turned it to the right. He slammed his fist into the emergency stop button. The glass cover shattered. His skin broke. Blood smeared across the plastic. The screens in the bunker flickered. The digital voice cut off mid-sentence. The radar array at Bandar Abbas tilted down toward the ground. The signals stopped. The emissions vanished. 3:02 in the morning. The coast of Iran. The bunker was suddenly, violently quiet. The cooling fans for the main array slowed to a hum. The green glow of the primary consoles faded into a dull gray. Commander Arash stood over the shattered glass of the emergency button. His breathing was the loudest thing in the room. He looked at his hand. Small shards of glass were embedded in his palm. Blood dripped onto the floor. The operator looked at him with a face like a ghost. "Sir, the American missiles. They lost our signal. They hit the water 400 meters off the coast. The southern battery is reporting a total system reset." The phone in Arash's hand buzzed. It was a new message from his son. "Father, look at the spacing again. It is a prime number sequence. It is a handshake protocol. It is not an attack profile." Arash looked at the secondary diagnostic screen. The 17 dots were no longer moving like aircraft. They were blinking in a rhythmic pattern. 2, 3, 5, 7, 11. It was a mathematical sequence. It was not a strike package. It was a massive, high-altitude electronic malfunction. An American drone controller had suffered a logic collapse. The machines were broadcasting their internal testing code. They were not flying a mission. They were stuck in a digital loop. 200 miles away, the Combat Information Center of the USS Abraham Lincoln was frozen. Captain Miller watched the data streams. The electronic warfare officer turned his chair around. His face was pale. "Ma'am," the officer said, "the drone controller is reporting a total system desynchronization. The drones are not being piloted. They are stuck in an automated diagnostic sequence. They are drifting into Iranian airspace because their navigation is slave to a faulty master clock." Miller felt a wave of cold sweat. She had almost authorized a strike over a software bug. She looked at the blank spot on the map where the Iranian radar had been. "The Iranians," she whispered. "Do they know?" "Their commander just saved his own life," the officer said. "And ours. He must have seen the pattern. He shut down his own grid to stop his missiles from firing at ghosts." Miller leaned back. The tension in her shoulders did not leave. "He is a dead man. His superiors will not see a hero. They will see a traitor who blinded the nation in the middle of a crisis." Inside the bunker, the heavy steel door hissed open. The sound of boots on the concrete stairs echoed through the room. It was the security team from the surface. They were not there to help. They were not there to help. General Kazemi's voice came through the wall speakers. "Commander Arash, you are relieved of duty. You will step away from the console immediately. You are under arrest for sabotage." Arash did not move. He looked at the operator. "Record the diagnostic data, every bit of it. If they delete the logs, the truth dies with me. Show them the prime numbers. Show them the loop." The security team entered the room. They carried assault rifles. They did not look at the screens. They only looked at Arash. In the sky above, the 17 drones continued their silent, rhythmic blinking. They were drifting slowly back toward the international line. The diplomatic transport was safe. The American fighters were turning away. The crisis of the missiles was over. The crisis for Commander Arash had just begun. 3:03 in the morning. The Bandar Abbas Sector Command. The sound of the heavy boots on the concrete floor was rhythmic and cold. Two security officers gripped Commander Arash by the arms. They pulled him away from his chair. His headset fell to the floor with a plastic click. The screen he had been watching was now a dull gray. The tactical data was gone. General Kazemi stood in the center of the room. His uniform was perfect. His face was a mask of fury. "You have blinded this entire sector. You have allowed the enemy to move without opposition. You will be lucky if you face a firing squad by dawn." Arash did not struggle. He looked at the young operator. The boy was still sitting at the backup console. "Look at the frequency logs. Look at the interval between the pulses. It is a prime number sequence. 2, 3, 5, 7. They are not attacking. They are failing." The general stepped forward. He slapped Arash across the face. The sound echoed in the silent bunker. "Silence! You are a traitor. You have compromised the defense of the nation." The operator whispered, "General, sir, he is right." Kazemi turned his head slowly. "What did you say?" The young man pointed at a secondary monitor. It was a raw signal feed from the southern battery. The 17 targets are still there, but they are not maneuvering. They are drifting with the high-altitude winds, and they are broadcasting a repeating digital handshake. It is a maintenance loop. The American systems have crashed. 3:08 in the morning, 200 miles away. Captain Miller looked at the master clock in the Combat Information Center. The tension in the room was shifting. It was no longer the heat of battle. It was the cold realization of a massive technical failure. She turned to her electronic warfare officer. "Can we talk to them? Can we signal that this was a mistake?" The officer shook his head. "The Iranians have shut down their long-range communications. They are in a total blackout. If we send a radio message now, they will think it is a virus. They will think we are trying to hack their remaining systems." Miller looked at the screen. The two Iranian F-14s were still in the air. They were orbiting the diplomatic transport. They were blind. They were scared. And they were armed with live missiles. "We need a visual signal," Miller said. "Something they cannot misinterpret. Something that does not require a radio." She keyed the frequency for Lieutenant Vance, Eagle 161. "This is strike. Do you have the lead Iranian in sight?" Vance responded immediately. "Copy. I am 2,000 feet behind his 6 o'clock. He is erratic. He is looking for a target he cannot find." "Listen closely," Miller said. "I want you to pull up alongside him. Up alongside him. Do not use your weapons. Do not use your radar. I want you to cycle your landing lights. 3 long flashes. 3 short. 3 long. The international signal for distress. Show him we are having a problem. Show him we are not the aggressor." 3:12 in the morning. In the sky over the strait, the Iranian pilots saw a ghost materialize. A dark shape slid out of the shadows of the clouds. It was the F-35. It did not move to an attack position. It drifted slowly until it was wingtip to wingtip with the Iranian jet. Then, the American plane began to blink. Bright white lights cut through the darkness. 3 long, 3 short, 3 long. It was the oldest code in the world. The Iranian pilot stared through his canopy. He looked at the American pilot. Vance raised his gloved hand. Then, he pointed toward his own head. He made a circular motion, the universal sign for a broken machine. 3:15 in the morning. Inside the bunker, the operator turned his screen toward General Kazemi. "Sir, the pilot of Guardian 1 is reporting a visual contact. The American is signaling distress. He is claiming a technical failure." Kazemi looked at the screen. He looked at Arash. The fury in his eyes began to fade. It was a realization of how close he had come to a mistake that would have burned the world. He looked at the security officers. "Release him." Arash stood up. He rubbed his wrists. He did not look at gray screens. The silence in the bunker was no longer heavy. It was a reprieve. But the machines were still drifting. The diplomatic transport was still in the zone. The crisis was moving from the cockpit to the conference room. 3:16 in the morning. The Bandar Abbas Sector Command. The silence in the bunker was broken by the sound of keys clicking. General Kazemi stood behind Commander Arash. He did not speak. He did not apologize. He simply watched the screen as the primary radar array began to rotate again. The power surge from the emergency shutdown had tripped the circuit breakers in the cooling system. It took 4 minutes to bring the processors back to life. Arash wiped the blood from his palm with a piece of gauze. He sat back in his chair. The green light returned to the displays. The 17 targets were still there, but they were different now. "They are responding to a signal," the operator said. His voice was steady again. "Look at the telemetry. They are turning in unison. A 180-degree course change. They are heading back toward the carrier strike group." Arash watched the icons move. The Americans have regained control of the master loop. They have sent a hard reset command. The ghosts are going home. General Kazemi looked at the wall clock. 3:18 in the morning. "What about our aircraft? What about Guardian 1? Arash keyed the radio. "Guardian 1, this is Control. Return to base. The threat is downgraded. Do not pursue the withdrawing assets." The pilot's voice came through with a crackle of static. "Copy. Control. The American fighter is breaking formation. He is dipping his wings. I am turning to bearing 090. Coming home." 3:30 in the morning, 200 miles away. The Combat Information Center of the USS Abraham Lincoln felt like a room that had just survived a heart attack. The air was cool again. The frantic shouting had been replaced by the low murmur of damage control reports and system audits. Captain Miller sat in her command chair. She watched the blue icons of the drone swarm. They were back in the recovery pattern. They were no longer broadcasting the prime number sequence. They were just machines again, obedient, predictable. The tactical officer approached her with a tablet. "Ma'am." The drone controller on the ship suffered a memory leak in the navigation kernel. It caused a cascading logic failure. The system tried to recalibrate by using a legacy testing protocol. That is why they were blinking the prime numbers. It was a factory reset happening in mid-air. Miller closed her eyes for a moment. A memory leak. We almost started a regional war because of a memory leak. Yes, ma'am, the officer said. And if the Iranians had fired, our response would have been automatic. Our response would have been automatic. We would have hit their coastal batteries. They would have launched their fast boats. By 4 in the morning, the strait would have been closed to all traffic. Miller looked at the screen. The Iranian radar was back on. It was painting her ship with a steady, non-aggressive search beam. It was a professional greeting, a sign that the other side was watching, but not shooting. The commander on that coast, Miller said. He saw it. He saw the glitch before we did. 3:45 in the morning. In the sky over the Gulf, the 2 F-14 Tomcats banked toward the lights of Bandar Abbas. Below them, the water was a deep, silent black. The American F-35 was a tiny speck of light in the distance. It was moving back toward the Lincoln. Lieutenant Vance watched the Iranian jets disappear into the haze of the coast. He did not feel like a hero. He felt exhausted. He looked at his fuel gauge. He had 10 minutes of flight time remaining before he had to trap on the carrier. He keyed his internal recorder. Mission note. The Iranian pilot showed extraordinary restraint under a non-kinetic thump. Tactical discipline on both sides prevented an escalation. Requesting a full review of the drone logic core. This cannot happen again. Inside the bunker, Arash watched the last of the American icons fade from the long-range screen. The room was quiet. The security team had withdrawn to the hallway. General Kazemi was on a secure phone to Tehran. He was explaining the situation. He was using words like tactical brilliance and electronic verification. He was taking credit for the restraint. Arash did not care. He picked up his personal phone from the floor. He saw a message from Reza. "Are you okay? Did it work?" Arash typed a simple reply. "It worked. Go back to sleep." The crisis of the 17 targets was over. The physical weapons had been put away, but the digital world was still broken. And the men who controlled the buttons knew that the next time, they might not have a sun to call, or a light to blink. 6:15 in the morning, the coast of Iran. The sun began to climb over the jagged peaks of the Zagros Mountains. The sky turned a bruised purple, then a bright and unforgiving orange. The heat of the day was already beginning to shimmer over the salt flats. At the Bandar Abbas Air Base, the 2 F-14 Tomcats sat on the tarmac. Their engines were cool. Maintenance crews moved around them in silence. There was no celebration. There were no medals. The pilots walked toward the debriefing room with their helmets under their arms. They looked like men who had seen the end of the world and lived to tell no one. Inside the bunker, Commander Arash sat alone. General Kazemi had left for Tehran 2 hours ago. The security team was gone. The technical logs had been sealed by the intelligence ministry. Arash knew he would not be executed, but he also knew his career was finished. He had bypassed the chain of command. He had used a personal phone during a combat alert. In the eyes of the state, he was too dangerous to keep, but he was too correct to kill. 1 day later, Washington, District of Columbia. A classified briefing room in the Pentagon was filled with officers in summer whites. Captain Miller stood at the podium. She did not talk about the intercept. She talked about the software. The 17 incident was a failure of logic, not of men. We built a system that could not admit it was broken. It chose to look like an attack rather than a crash. The admiral in the front row leaned forward. And the Iranian commander. Why did he not fire? Because he was looking at the same screen we were, Miller said. Her voice was flat. If he had followed the manual, we would be in a general state of war right now. 3 days later, the Strait of Hormuz. The water was as flat as a sheet of glass. The USS Abraham Lincoln was 300 miles to the south. The drone swarm was grounded for a total software rewrite. The incident was officially recorded in the logs as a non-event. It was called a radar calibration error. No press releases were issued. No diplomatic protests were filed. Both sides agreed to let the silence hold. Military analysts would later call it the silent crisis. It was a moment where the most advanced weapons on the planet were neutralized by a human decision. It was a reminder that in the age of autonomous machines, the most important component is still the conscience of the operator. Modern warfare is often described as a game of speed, of sensors and microchips, but in the darkness of the Gulf, it was decided by a phone call and a blink of a landing light. Arash sat on a small balcony in a quiet suburb of Shiraz. He was no longer a commander. He was a civilian in a plain linen shirt. He held his phone in his hand. He looked at the contact for his son. He did not call. He just watched the sun go down over the city. The Gulf was silent. It was a fragile silence. It was bought with a single moment of restraint. In the world of modern warfare, the greatest victories are the shots that are never fired. The morning was quiet. For now,